The Fire Emblem Heroes community, myself included, spends a lot of time talking about units and builds. That shouldn't be too surprising. Units and builds are the meat and potatoes of the game. But actual combat isn't played out on the simulator. Units need to work well as part of a team, and building a good arena team can be very intimidating for a brand new player. That begs the question, how should a new player approach building their very first arena team? Before anything else, their team needs to have room for a bonus unit and must be built with this limitation in mind. Thanks to bonus units, you'll want to focus on a stable 3-unit setup that can carry some dead weight. These 3 units are often called your arena core, and it's going to be the foundation on which you build your team going forward. Arena scoring isn't complicated, but it can be very frustrating. Units with a high base stat total, personal weapons, active blessings, expensive skills, and merges will score well. Units with low BST, generic weapons, cheap skills, and no merges will score poorly in comparison. So for example, Hector scores well. He has an expensive A skill, a unique weapon, and armor BST. There's a good bit of math involved here, so I'll put some links in the description in case you want more detailed info on how scoring works. I know that sounds annoying, but many of the things that raise your score, like upgrading weapons and skills or merging your units, are things you should be doing eventually anyway. In your core, you'll want to find a balance between upfront power and the price for growth. Consider Aira, for example. Aira is a great unit, and thanks to her inflated BST, personal weapon, and unique skill, she scores really highly. She looks like the perfect arena unit, and among infantry she is one of the best. However, as an exclusive 5-star unit with less than optimal base skills, getting her to maximum potential is very expensive. I'm not going to tell you to avoid expensive builds or exclusive units if you find them interesting, but a cheap core can perform just as well. A team built out of high availability units that you can pull at 3 or 4 star, will start off weaker, but will grow stronger much more quickly and reliably. In the arena, perfect runs are the only runs that matter, so you want units that can do their job and do it well. Think about units in terms of positions or roles, and think about the common threats that you need them to answer. I know that seems overwhelming. There's over 200 units now, and plenty of variation in terms of builds, natures, and merges to keep track of. But here's the secret. Most of that variation doesn't actually matter. Just plan for the worst case scenario and your team can handle everything else. Balancing these considerations is your goal. You want a team that's cheap, effective, and scores well. With all this in mind, here are my suggestions for your first new player attempt at building an arena core. As always, these are just my thoughts, and I encourage you to do whatever you think is fun above all else. Up first, we have one of the most cost-effective arena teams ever, a player phase-focused cavalry team with a dancer. By using units like Reinhardt, Cecilia, and Bolin, backed up with cavalry buffs, this team can handle almost anything. If you do find yourself in trouble somehow, the dancer can just bail you out. The big problem with this team is the score ceiling. Even with full builds, you may find yourself struggling to get points if you don't have a huge number of merges. Next, we have an enemy phase team built around dragons, specifically Adult Tiki, Fae, Female Corrin, and Naui. These units can defuse most scary arena threats and have access to a refinable distant counter weapon. They're very scalable, and only get better with merges and investment. This team starts off cheap, but gets expensive quick once you start adding in pricey skills like Steady Breath or Aether. Finally, we have a time-tested classic, the Blade Mage infantry team. This team is centered around a Blade Tome Mage, usually Nino, a buff bot, usually Erica, and a dancer. It's a very low investment setup, and it's been around kind of forever. The idea is simple: buff Nino, pointer at the enemy, and watch them explode. This archetype is uniquely vulnerable to panic ploy, and suffers a bit in terms of score potential thanks to the inclusion of a dancer and a ranged unit. But Blade Tomes are no joke, and they're still as strong as they ever were. Again, this is just a starting point. Don't feel pressured into using only these kinds of teams. If there's a unit you really love and you know you want them on your team, think about what that unit's strengths and weaknesses are, and pair them up with allies that can augment those advantages or mitigate those problems. In the arena, a little bit of planning goes a long way. Hopefully I did a good job with this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. As always, I hope to see you next time.